I want to thank y'all for coming out today. Conservation Careers is a virtual series that seeks to shine a light on professional careers of conservation people and how we got our start and what tools we use to get there so that they can help you and anyone else you know also achieve those goals. Today, we're being joined by Gabe Andrle. He is our resident habitat program manager at Georgia Audubon, and he'll be speaking on our dream jobs real, from the zoo to the wild. So with that being said, I'm going to turn this over to Gabe and let him talk about himself and his journey. So Gabe, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Kiana. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and to talk with everyone and share you a little bit about my journey and how I got to where I am and some things that I learned. It has been a wild and fun ride, and yeah, I'm excited to share with you all. So really quickly, I'm going to stop my share and reshare my screen to try and make it completely full screen. Let's see. There we go. All right. Yeah, so our dream job's real, from the zoo to the wild. So to give you an overview of what we're going to talk today about, first where I started, kind of where I grew up and sort of my background just as a person. And then we're going to jump into high school and volunteering, because that's where I feel like I really started to move into the direction that I wanted to go, or really started following my interests more intensely and intentionally. Then my first jobs and starting college, making the most out of my education, how I thought that was really important and what I did to do that. Things don't always go as planned. So yeah, there's never a straight path, or it's extremely rare. And so, yeah, and so whenever something, whenever there's a twist in the road, figuring that out, I think it's really important. It's really valuable, and it shapes, who you are, and you don't have to be afraid of things not going the way that you originally thought them to go. And we'll get into that further. Then after graduating college, a little bit about what I did from there. And then, okay, what now? Where am I today, and what am I doing? And yes, I have always been a nature nerd. I've always loved nature and the outdoors. And I grew up in the Chicagoland area in a near west suburb. I am the middle of 5 kids. And I think that shaped me in a lot of ways, and made me pretty well-rounded. And I was always excited to do new things and try new things and get involved with all sorts of stuff. And I can thank my siblings, I think, partially for that, because we just had an exciting childhood where we were always on the go and wanting to do new things. And from a very early age, I was in love with nature and wanted to spend as much time as I could out in nature and get connected with it. And just, I was fascinated. I was driven and inspired by people like Steve Irwin and Jeff Corwin. So Steve Irwin's the late crocodile hunter who had a TV show and movies, where he's out exploring the wilderness. And that really stemmed my passion for reptiles and amphibians, which is something I've always been really, really interested in. And I was really exploring nature in an urban context. And I think that also helped shape my interests down the road. In the urban Chicagoland area, there weren't always huge wild spaces, or it wasn't really easy to access all of them. And so I found me exploring stuff in my backyard, at really small city parks, and kind of finding little bits of green spaces and seeking out nature in that way and learning from it that way. And I would spend as much time as I could in those spaces. One of my best friends, his dad was kind of an outdoorsman, and he always took us to these, green spaces. And I just always found them really exciting. And there was always something new and something to see and something to learn. And so Yeah, in preschool, actually, I had the dream to become a zookeeper. I remember sitting down in a preschool class and asking my teacher, um, how old do I have to be a zookeeper? And that was just something I grew up, as a suburbanite. Um, the Brookfield Zoo was close to where I grew up in the Chicagoland area, and I spent a good amount of time there. And so, um, that was some of my deepest connections to the natural world, was going to the zoo and seeing animals and seeing zookeepers working with them and caring for them and enriching their lives. And so that was something that I was really interested in, and that became my dream from an early age. Um, and then, you know, as I said, I really loved nature, and I started to build my knowledge base on nature and the environment from an early age. I had science projects starting in kindergarten. I remember in kindergarten, I did a project on frogs, and then first grade, I did a project on alligators. I did one on raptors. I did one on geckos. I did all kinds of science projects throughout elementary school and middle school, focused on nature and stuff. And I think that continued to build my knowledge and understanding of the natural world. And I also read a lot of books, and I found that to be really helpful as well. And so we jumped to high school, and building on my kind of foundations as a middle child, I liked to do a lot of things. If my older brother was doing something, I'd want to do it. If my younger brother was doing something, I'd want to do it. And so I got exposure to a lot of different things. And for a while in high school, I wanted to be a jazz musician. I played the saxophone and really loved that. And I think that I want to highlight that it can be really valuable to try a lot of different things. And you don't necessarily have to go gung-ho in one direction, because all those little experiences, if you take them seriously, or if you just enjoy them and learn from them and reflect on them, you can learn a lot, and you can take that those experiences and apply them to whatever you're doing in the future. So I was involved in a lot of sports. I played basketball, I played tennis. I did musical theater. I sang in choir. I did all sorts of stuff. I also went to a pretty small school, so it was easier to do a wide variety of things. But yeah, I really just said, I want to get exposure to as much things as I can. And I kind of tested my interest in nature, right? Like I really had that strong interest, and that was my dream, to be a zookeeper. But in high school, I took the opportunity to explore other things and went through a phase where I wanted to be a jazz musician. And so one big turning point for me in high school was I was also on the wrestling team. And I think junior year, I had the choice to either stay on the wrestling team or volunteer at the zoo, doing a specific program focused on more in-depth animal research. So I had already started volunteering at the zoo, and my junior and senior year, I had the opportunity to do some extra additional volunteering. And I made the decision at that point to do that. So I stopped wrestling, and I started going to the zoo even more. And that was a big decision for me at the time, and I think it helped push me to where I am today. But I was able to kind of weigh all of my interests, and I was still able to be involved with music and things like that at that time. And so, that kind of set the stage for an experience that really changed my life, and that was volunteering at the Brookfield Zoo in the Chicagoland area. So I guess I had a propensity to posing with animal statues and really liked that. But they have an awesome teen volunteer program called the Youth Volunteer Corps at the time, which I think has now changed into a new teen volunteer program. And I continued to seek opportunities to get involved with nature and learn about animals outside of any opportunity I could. So on the far right is me with a picture of a snake that's at a reptile show. where people sell and breed reptiles and stuff, and I thought that was really interesting, so I went to those. But this volunteer experience at the zoo really had a huge impact on my life. And like I said, I was able to start volunteering with this group right when I got out of middle school and I got into high school. And it was really special because for a variety of reasons, but I was able to be surrounded by other, people my age who had an interest or passion in nature. And some people didn't necessarily have that interest, but they were just passionate about volunteering and getting this experience. But for the most part, everybody really liked animals, and it was just an awesome environment to be in, a fun group, and we had awesome opportunities to learn more about animals. We went out into the zoo and we taught people about animals, so we had to build our social skills of putting ourselves out there and talking in front of strangers. And we worked on group projects together, and we did all sorts of fun things. We went on field trips, and it was just a really valuable experience. And this is the program that I stopped wrestling to further kind of develop my experience here by taking part in the science track that they offered a limited number of volunteers to get involved. And you got a more kind of in-depth training doing inquiry-based research. And so I got paired with a mentor at the time at the zoo who was a zookeeper. So I was extremely thrilled by that. Zookeeper is, what I wanted to do since I was in preschool. And here I was getting the opportunity to work directly with one, learn from them, learn about research and science, and learn about conservation, and be surrounded by, all of these people that I really enjoyed, and some people who turned into lifelong friends. And so this volunteering opportunity was really special to me, and I was really fortunate to be able to do that. And so I think getting exposure to things you're interested in any capacity, even if you don't have the opportunity to volunteer a lot, maybe just getting a little experience here and there, I think can go a long way. But during this program, my kind of dream sort of shifted again. And I went from, really being interested in being a zookeeper, I think partially motivated by all of my peers and the excitement of being around others, to thinking that I, wanted to become a veterinarian. And I was able to explore this interest a little bit while volunteering in this program. I took the initiative to kind of reach out and talk to my supervisors and ask about the veterinarians at the zoo and see if there's any opportunities to get involved with the veterinary clinic. They had multiple full-time veterinarians working at the zoo to take care of the animals. And because I kind of took the time to talk to my supervisors and tell them my interests and say, hey, it would be really cool if some of us could go shadow the veterinarians at the zoo or go meet with them and talk with them. I ended up getting those opportunities. I got to meet with the veterinarians and talk to them about their experience. I ended up getting to shadow the veterinarians and see them while they're doing surgery and caring for animals. And it was a really neat experience, and it really excited me and led me to pursuing that when I was in college. And so, late in high school, I was, starting to look for colleges, and I applied to a bunch of colleges with the mindset that I wanted to do veterinary school after college. And so I was just interested in, going to a school where I thought I would be able to get a good education and get some experience that would make me a good applicant in veterinary school. And so I applied to places all over the place. I did kind of just a bunch of research. I remember checking out college books from the library and looking through them and finding colleges that had zoology or environmental sciences or wildlife programs, and starting to make a really long list, and then looking at factors about where the schools were and this and that. And I ended up applying to, I think, over 10 schools, which is quite a lot. But it all came down to 2 schools in the end. and I could either go to the college that my older brother and sister went to in the Chicagoland area, or I could take total turn and go down to Georgia and go to Emory University and go to school there. So I visited that school, and I, really wanted to make sure that I was doing the most I could to figure out if, that school might be the right school for me. So I actually contacted some of the professors in the department that I was interested in, being a student in. And I just, I had no connection with them at all. I just found their emails on the website, emailed them, told them I was a prospective student and I would love to meet with them to chat about, their program, their what they teach, what they do research on. And so when I went down and visited, I was able to meet with a couple of professors in the Department of Environmental Sciences and hear a little bit from them and walk around the campus and get a feel for everything. And I really liked it. It excited me. It scared me a little bit to move that far away from home and, not take the same path that my older brother and sister took, but I decided to go for it. And I think that was a big decision, and I'm really glad that I made that choice. At the same time, that summer before college, when I was no longer eligible to be a volunteer at the zoo, I applied to a job at the zoo that I had been a volunteer at. And I got a job working in the family zoo at the zoo. And I did environmental education. And it was really similar to the stuff I was doing as a volunteer. So I was interacting with guests, teaching them about the animals, doing all sorts of stuff. And I really, really enjoyed it. And it was something I was able to do, when I was back home from college during breaks and over the summer. And that was my first job experience. And yeah, I hit the ground running there and really enjoyed it. And it was something I was comfortable with. And because of my volunteer experience, I think I was able to get that job. And then starting college, I mentioned that I had met with professors before starting, and one of them in particular had a lab that I was interested in. And I was eligible for the work study program at college. And so right away, I contacted that professor and told him I'd love to start, working for him if he had any openings for work study student. And sure enough, he did. He had a job in his lab as a lab technician, and his lab was a disease ecology lab. So studying the ecology of diseases, how diseases interact, but particularly he's studying that in primates. And so we were looking at disease in mountain gorillas and chimpanzees. And the way we were able to do that is by looking at fecal samples. So I was in the monkey poop lab when I started, and that was one of my other first jobs, is looking at the different microorganisms and parasites that different primates have under microscopes and documenting that. And I had a great lab group, and that's the picture on the right, me sitting in the lab with two of my lab mates. And yeah, it was a really great way to, get some experience early, because I started doing that my first semester of college. And that was, because I had thought I had to reach out to that professor and get that started. And so that ended up being a really big, impactful experience, and taught me a lot. And Emory didn't have, a zoology program or wildlife program. So I ended up going with environmental sciences. And I ended up choosing Emory because, all of those reasons I listened, but also Emory ended up offering me the most amount of money, and I was able to get a Pell Grant and was able to choose that school above the other. And yeah, so then while I was also a student, I ended up working a few other jobs, and one of those was a resident advisor. So I lived in the dorms at my school for all 4 years, and I was employed as a resident advisor. And that was a really great experience. I got to live on campus, got to live in the nicest, newest buildings, and was always, really close to my classes and everything. And for me, that was an experience, outside of what I, outside of my core interests of nature. But it was an experience that I embraced and was excited for because I knew that it would make me more well-rounded. Once again, going back to being the middle child of five, I was always interested in and excited to be in social spaces. So this was a great way to, be in a group and get some professional kind of experiences. I remember doing interviews for this position and taking them really serious and learning how to, put together a resume and think about answering questions and asking questions, and then, being a supervisor of students and being a mentor. And that was some really good leadership experience from an early time at my start at college. And so I think, as you are going about following your interests and following, your dreams, not being afraid to kind of step outside of what you think is that exact lane and getting experiences that you think will just make you really well-rounded or, give you other strengths and skills can be really valuable. Because I think this experience really taught me a lot about interacting with a wide variety of people and being able to take initiative on projects and just get things done. And so I really valued that experience. Now, at building on that, I wanted to make the most out of my college experience. I, felt that I did that, in high school. And so that was kind of just how I like to roll. But I realized that all of the different things that my college offered me, I would probably not get most of those after I graduate, or it'd be a lot harder to get them. Everything is so concentrated in one place, and there's just so much going on. So I wanted to do as much as I could to, embrace that and do things that I wouldn't normally do, just for the sake of knowing, that putting yourself out there can really strengthen you, as a person. And like I said, it doesn't have to be in that niche of what you are really interested in. Getting experiences doing other things really makes you a stronger candidate, makes you a more interesting candidate for positions. It allows you to kind of stand out of the crowd. And so, yeah, so when I was in college, I never had the opportunity to take a dance class in my life, and I took some dance classes. I ended up joining the Emory Dance Company, which that's that photo on the right. I was in a group that we did a bunch of performances, and that was completely out of my comfort zone because I'd never done that before, and a lot of the people that were involved with that had been doing that for years. But it was really something that I think made me more comfortable in my own skin and more confident, and I really enjoyed that experience looking back. And I ended up taking quite a few different dance classes because of that. And it was a great way to just distract myself from maybe the busyness of some of the academic life as well. I always recommend building good habits and new skills. And during high school and college, it can be difficult, but really thinking about the small things that can go a long way in terms of like discipline when you are studying, figuring out places where you can go, managing your time. All of those habits can be really, really beneficial for you in the long run and make it kind of easier to adjust to new places when you learn how to take control of your time and be intentional with what you're doing each day. I think that can be really beneficial. And learning new skills, so you never know what skills are going to help you down the road. So getting new experiences can build new skills that can, like I said, make you stand out. Networking and maintaining relationships, I think, was one of the biggest things that I got out of my education. And I really do think the relationships that you build in college, I think you're exposed to more people than any other time of your life. And so you have the opportunity to meet so many new people and connect with them. And even if they're people that you think you might not like, they're not someone that's interested in the same thing as you, they might know somebody that's doing something that is related to what you're interested in, and that could eventually lead to a volunteer position or a job. One thing that I did is office hours. So a lot of professors will offer office hours in college, and I made sure that every professor, no matter what class, I'd go to office hours at least once to get to know them a little bit, to tell them a little bit about myself and start to build a relationship so that I had something to build on down the road. And even to this day, I still maintain relationships with some of my professors from my college time. And, they're great to go to for advice. And if you need a letter of recommendation or something like that. And so I think that is really, really valuable. And like I said, not just professors, but also your classmates. Your classmates are going to go on to do some amazing things, and staying in touch with them and building strong relationships with them can be really valuable. Take advantage of your resources and opportunities. Like I said, while you're in college, there's going to be so many different things you can do, whether that's a random lecture that you see advertised in a bulletin, outside your classroom door, or a free event, focused on some kind of art form that you are marginally interested in. There's all sorts of different opportunities, and I think taking advantage of those is really valuable, but also the resources that the school provides. And I'd say when you start college, try and get an idea of all of the resources your school offers right away, because you can certainly maybe not find out, and then your junior or senior year you find out and you're like, oh, I wish I would have been involved with this early on. So start by trying to get a sample of as much stuff as you can, and then you can narrow your focus and know exactly what resources are available, whether that's going to the library and asking the library what they have, going to the career center, asking what they offer, or talking to classmates as well. And another piece of advice I want to give is, don't be afraid to ask questions. Questions are wonderful and can lead to many open doors. Me asking those professors before I even started at school to meet with me, led to me getting that meeting, and then eventually led to me getting one of my first jobs working in that laboratory studying disease ecology and primates. And that was really important. Being, putting yourself out there, asking questions, is one of the best ways to learn and to open new doors. And you'd be surprised, what could come out of just asking a simple question. And that's another thing, advice for, speaking to, a professor or, other people. Like, it can be intimidating for sure, but if you have some preset questions, asking them about themselves can be really a great way to get them talking, get them comfortable, and showing that you maybe have some previous interest in them. So for example, when I met with those professors, I looked at what research they were doing and asked them specific questions about their research to show that I was interested in what they were doing, and I wanted to hear about, all the awesome things that they had done. And that, I think, was a really good catalyst for building a strong relationship. And then the last thing for making the most out of my education is travel. I was able to apply for different scholarships to get travel experiences. And then also, because of that lab that I was working in, I was able to join different groups to go abroad and do research. And those were some of the most impactful experiences on my life. And meanwhile, this whole time, I was still focusing on a goal of getting into veterinary school. So I was taking all the prerequisite courses. I joined the pre-vet club at school and got involved with leadership on that right away. And yeah, I was able to get these awesome travel experiences. So the first time I ever left the country was going to the Peruvian Amazon with a disease ecology, or not a disease, tropical ecology class, looking at wildlife and nature in the Amazon rainforest. And it was absolutely incredible. Yeah, I still have, friends from that experience, and we got to see all kinds of incredible animals and learn about the trees, the plants, the birds, and we got to walk up in this tree canopy walkway and see the diversity of life, over 100 feet in the canopy of the rainforest. We got to stay out there for 10 days And it was absolutely kind of awe-inspiring and really opened my mind up to, you know, a larger portion of the world, and started to build a stronger perspective in my mind of, you know, what else is out there in the world, and what does conservation and nature look like in other places. And so I thought that was, you know, a really pivotal time in my life. So here's my class with some different turtles and snakes that we encountered, and there's me with a smoky jungle frog that I caught when we were just in the forest at night looking for all kinds of critters. And as I mentioned earlier, I loved reptiles and amphibians, and so this was a really exciting time for me. My professor was a herpetologist, so he studied reptiles and amphibians, and it was an absolutely great time. At the same time, I started a YouTube channel called Nature with Gabe. I had a friend in college who really liked videography, and this goes to show, you know, having friends that do a lot of other things can help you build skills. So he made really cool videos, and I was like, I'm gonna go to Peru. I'd love to like put together a video of my time there. So I got a camera, and he taught me how to edit with some software, and I started making videos, and it's something that I do to this day. I have this YouTube channel called Nature with Gabe, where I make just fun environmental education videos, kind of documenting some of my experience in the outdoors. And it's yeah, it was something that I did and really started because of my relationship with that one friend who was into video stuff. And yeah, it's been a fun way to just capture all of my experiences over time. So during college, as I mentioned, I got all these awesome travel experiences, and a lot of them took place over the summers between semesters. And I, at one point, got this opportunity, this amazing opportunity, through another connection I had made in that disease ecology lab early on. So one of the ladies in this photo with this Auburn University flag is a professor named Sarah Zodi, and she did her postdoc in the lab that I was working in, studying disease ecology. And then she went on to become a professor at Auburn. And so one summer when I was looking for things to do, I was, you know, really hoping I'd get an experience abroad again, or a cool job. And I just reached out to her to see how she was doing. Once again, following up with folks that you were, you know, connected with. And she let me know she had an open field tech position with her lab, who was going to Madagascar. And she said, you know, we would love to have you aboard. We could cover your some of your expenses. And so I was able to fundraise to get a little more money to cover my flight, and was able to join this team to just do some ecosystem health research in Madagascar, which was an incredible experience. On the right, you can see me out at night with my camera, with a leaf-tailed gecko that jumped on my camera. And it was an awesome experience. I got to do a whole bunch of different stuff, looking at amphibians. I did some mosquito collecting and looking at disease ecology with mosquitoes. We interviewed people in different villages to get some global health data, and got to see some amazing wildlife along the way. And so I continued to make videos. I continued to try and get as many different experiences, learn about as many animals as I could, and really had an awesome experience there. And now this is where things kind of start to change, and plans start to take a twist. So another summer, directly through my experience working in that disease ecology lab, I had the opportunity to go with a team to Rwanda and work at the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund International. They study mountain gorillas in northern Rwanda. And during that time, I was on a team with some grad students and a veterinarian. And we were working to set up a disease ecology lab, studying, doing microscopy, so looking under microscopes to study what parasites are in gorillas and how they're affecting their populations. And during that experience, I had this opportunity to work directly with some veterinarians. And, at this point, I wanted to become a veterinarian. And so I was really excited to pick their brains, ask them questions, and really try and see myself in their shoes. And through this experience, I came to the realization that I didn't want to be a veterinarian. I just realized that what they were doing day in and day out was not exactly what I saw myself enjoying as a long-term career. And so at first I was like, oh, shoot, that really puts a wrench in my plans. I don't know what I'm going to do. And at this point, I had kind of given up on my zookeeper dreams and was really just like, okay, I need to figure something out quick. This was going into my junior year of college. And so time was starting to run out, or so I thought. And so, yeah, so I started to freak out a little bit. But this experience itself was incredible, in learning what you don't want to do is almost as important as learning what you do want to do. And so that was a big lesson learned here. Getting that experience, putting myself out there, and working with the veterinarians, asking them questions, being intentional with that, really led me to realize, that I didn't want to be a vet. And that photo of me with my friend Erin on the left there is really cool, because she was a friend that I had met in my youth volunteer program when I was back at the zoo in high school. And we just randomly bumped into each other when I was working in Rwanda. And I thought it was a really cool experience, and really goes to show the people you meet, you're going to bump into them down the road. And it's really good to maintain positive relationships and keep in touch with people. And that can lead to a lot of open doors. On the right, you can see me on the equator. We got the chance to go travel up to Uganda, which was a lot of fun. And, that just goes to show, if you get the opportunity to do any travel, I highly recommend it, because it can really give you some great perspective on things. So I realized I didn't want to be a veterinarian. So at that point, I was like, all right, well, what do I do? I don't know what to do. There's nothing that stands out. So what I did know is that I had that deep desire to learn about nature, and I love nature. I love reptiles and amphibians. And so I was like, okay, well, you know what? I'm just going to do things that interest me and see where that takes me, and do it intentionally, do it mindfully, think and reflect on the experiences as I have them. And that way I can continue to figure out what I don't like to do and what I do like to do. So I started taking interesting classes. I didn't have to take the set veterinary school required classes. I just started taking things that I really liked, which was really beneficial. My friend Tessa and I started volunteering at the Amphibian Foundation in Atlanta. I said, if I'm not tied to these certain requirements for vet school, I'm going to try and make the most out of being where I am in Atlanta, start connecting with different nonprofits. So we reached out to the Amphibian Foundation and started volunteering there, where we were doing animal husbandry, taking care of the animals, and getting to learn more about a variety of reptiles and amphibians. I also got in contact with the director of research at Zoo Atlanta, who is a professor at Georgia Tech as well, and started volunteering in his lab, the Mendelsohn lab. And we got the opportunity to go to Zoo Atlanta and study lizards at the zoo and study their cognitive abilities and their problem solving. So I got to work with a group of students there and learn to take data, analyze data, and learn about the research side of things at the zoo and the opportunities there. It also gave me exposure to other folks at Zoo Atlanta. I was able to work with zookeepers there in the reptile and amphibian department. And then I also, on top of working as a resident and advisor, and I was also working at a coffee shop at the time, I got a job at Fernbank Natural History Museum as an interpretive ranger. So it's a museum close to my school. And it was an opportunity to do some environmental education. I had that experience from working at the zoo earlier. And so it made me a more suitable candidate, and I was able to get that job and work that job a couple hours a week, which started giving me some great experience, not only continuing to educate people about nature, but working in an old growth forest and starting to learn about ecology in a native setting in the Atlanta area, and learn about management of an old growth forest. There's 65 acres there that I helped take care of So we were removing non-native plants and trying to maintain the health of that ecosystem. And that was really valuable to me. So yeah, so there I was at Fernbank, got to see a lot of cool native wildlife like that barred owl, summer tanager, goldfinches, and I really enjoyed that position. And then after graduation, I still didn't know 100% what I wanted to do, but based on all of those experiences that I had exposed myself to, I kind of naturally fell into a position at Zoo Atlanta. And so the lab that I had been working in doing lizard research led to an opportunity to get a job as a seasonal keeper in the herpetology department. So this was my first job out of college. And I really was able to get this because the zoo at the time was hiring a full-time keeper one position. And I wasn't quite qualified for that. But since I had the opportunity to work with the zookeepers and staff there, I expressed my interest in working there. And they actually opened up a seasonal position for me because they knew it would buy them some time to continue to look for a keeper with more experience. And so I was really excited to get to work for a couple months in the herpetology department, taking care of reptiles and amphibians, learning how to enrich them, spending a lot of time cleaning and caring for them and picking up after them, getting exposed to conservation work in zoos, working with, breeding certain reptiles and amphibians for conservation, getting to educate the public about the animals that we had, and then working with an awesome team to maintain the different reptiles and amphibians that we had. At the same time, I continued my job as a part-time ranger at Fernbank, which continued to allow me to get more exposure to forest and ecology and native ecosystems. During all of this, I also continued to volunteer at the Amphibian Foundation because I loved reptiles and amphibians. In my spare time, I went out and looked for snakes and frogs and lizards and made videos about them, just because that's something I was really passionate about and loved to do. And so after my time ended as a reptile and amphibian keeper, because it was a seasonal position, there was an opening in the bird department. And at this point in time, I really was like, reptiles and amphibians are my thing. I want to stick with them. But there was no opening in the reptile and amphibian department. So, me as someone who has, knows that there is value in stepping a little bit outside of your comfort zone or outside of the direct path that you know of, and you can take and learn from that, I was less afraid to be like, all right, I'll join the bird department. And so that's what I did. There's a position there, I applied, I got it, and I started to get to work with all these amazing birds. It's a milky eagle, owl chick on the left, a king vulture in the middle, and a lapid-faced vulture on the right. And so I got to get some more hands-on experience, was exposed to more conservation, and really get to set my roots at the zoo and feel like I was able to make the most out of the experience there. And so while I was at the zoo, I worked on a grant to focus more on native wildlife, because someone, who grew up in the urban metro area of Chicago, I was really connected to wildlife that was in my backyard. And I thought the zoo didn't necessarily hit that for me or engage me in that way a whole ton. And so I worked with the zoo to do some education around native species, and that's how I got introduced to Atlanta Audubon at the time. And Atlanta Audubon ended up having a job that really appealed to me because it was focused on urban wildlife, excuse me, and ecology. It was a job to manage the wildlife sanctuary program that they had and do a lot more with plants. And from my position working at Fernbank, I had a lot of really good experience that made me a suitable candidate for this job. And obviously working at the zoo had allowed me to build my knowledge on birds. And so at this point, I had met my dream of becoming a zookeeper. So why would I want to move on from that? Well, I realized that my dream from being in preschool of being a zookeeper was an exciting thing, and I loved it, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted. At that point, I was like, I'm going to continue to follow my interest, and I was really interested in native wildlife. And so goes to show, you can have dream jobs, but your dream jobs might not turn out to be exactly what you had intended. And so being open to a variety of opportunities and being able to follow your interests can be really beneficial. So I started working at Atlanta Audubon as a conservation program coordinator. And now, just a couple of years ago, I transitioned from that position at Atlanta Audubon to being the habitat program manager at Georgia Audubon. And I love this position because I feel like it's a culmination of a lot of my past experiences. It allows me to connect people with wildlife. It allows me to take an ecosystem approach and really focus on ecology and the big picture of all the different aspects of nature, and work in conservation. I'm able to learn a lot. If you can't tell, I'm a passionate learner, and really enjoy learning. And so that's something I look for in a position. And during my job currently, I do a lot of habitat management and restoration. I work with a team that I supervise to do invasive species removal, native planting, monitoring of these different sites, and really get to do conservation in my own backyard here in Georgia. And that's something that I'm really excited about and really love connecting people to. And I still get to do education and community engagement. Georgia Audubon's mission is to build places where birds and people thrive. And we do that not only through conservation, but also education and community engagement. And so I'm excited to get exposure to those things as well. And I continue to make Nature with Gabe videos on the side. So I really enjoy doing that too. And I get outside as much as I can to hike and find reptiles and amphibians. I thought reptiles and amphibians were going to be my career for the longest time, but I really enjoy the opportunities that birds provide. But I'm still able to fulfill my interest in reptiles and amphibians by connecting with others and finding them in the wild. So I'm going to kind of race through this so we can get to some questions. But just to tell you a little bit more about what I do now, the habitat program at Georgia Audubon started in 2021. We've planted over 20,000 native plants in 2022, and we've worked on over 120 acres. And we rely heavily on volunteers. So if people are interested in volunteering on our habitat days, we sometimes have opportunities for different folks to get out on the ground, help us remove invasive plants and plant natives. And why do we do this? Because birds are declining. Unfortunately, birds have faced a massive decline over the past 50 years. And habitat loss and degradation are the biggest leading causes. And so doing habitat work is really important. Some examples, Panola Mountain State Park, we've been turning this old golf course into a native meadow using prescribed fire and native planting. We've been removing non-native invasive plants and putting native seed down. And that's been a wonderful experience. We've been able to engage volunteers and different folks to come out and help with that. On Jekyll Island, we've been turning this non-native turf grass area into a native pink muley meadow with a bunch of volunteers. And then here at the National Park, just north of town, we're working on a pollinator garden to connect people to what they could do in their own backyard to support pollinators and birds in small spaces. And so, yeah, that's my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions, and yeah, really excited and happy to be here and talk about my experience getting to where I am today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gabe. I feel like I learned, even though we work together, I feel like I learned a lot about you through your presentation. So thank you for sharing your journey. Does anyone have any questions for Gabe while we're nearing the end? I see one question from Liz. If you could, I'm going to set it so that you can talk. All right. Hi, Liz.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much for this. And I am a recent graduate from Georgia State in environmental science, and I'm realizing that I'm one of those people who didn't realize the opportunities that I could have had during my college experience until it was quote unquote too late. So I'm kind of stuck now trying to enter similar career fields, but without as much experience. And I was just curious if you had any advice on how to get that kind of foot up.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, one, because you don't have maybe all the typical experience that someone would for the stuff you are now interested in, leverage that uniqueness and leverage the experience that you do have to make you stand out amongst others, and let people know for jobs and opportunities you're applying to that, you know, let them know that you realize this later on, but you still have a lot of awesome experience that can make you a strong candidate and you can learn quickly. And I think that's one way to approach things. And then also, yeah, it's easy to look back and be like, oh, I should have done this, or I should have done this, you know, it would have been really helpful. But also, I've learned that, you know, college definitely is like the easiest to engage with a variety of opportunities because it's all right there on your plate, for the most part. But no matter what stage you are in, there's going to be opportunities to seek out. And so I would say, really try to find things that you can add, experiences you can add to, cater your resume or your, you know, experience to whatever you're interested in applying for or doing. So whether that is like cold emailing people at an organization that you're interested in volunteering with or working with, you know, and just asking them, saying you're interested about this, is there anything that I can do? You know, getting your foot in the door that way, whether it's attending an event. When I was interested in working with when I first found out about the Amphibian Foundation, it was because their director at the time, he was giving a talk at a coffee shop, a local coffee shop, and I had never heard of the organization. I really like frogs. So I just went to this event. And at that event, I was able to talk to him, learn more about the organization, and start to create some interface with him so he knew who I was. And that allowed me to volunteer later on. So yeah, getting creative with finding, you know, the opportunities that you can add to build upon, you know, that direction that you want to head towards, I think can be something that you can still do even when you're out of college. And of course, you know, depending on what's going on in your life, you have to manage and balance different things. But reaching out to people, I think, is huge, and maintaining relationships and leveraging the past experiences that you do have. And even if it's just volunteering like once a month, that's something, and that's a place to start, and you can build on that. So even if it's a really small opportunity in the direction or interest that you have, I think it's worth trying to engage that as best you can. And you never know when someone just needs a job, right? Like when I started working at Zoo Atlanta, I was not qualified for that position at all, but they needed someone and they didn't have anyone at the time. And so they opened up that part-time or that full-time seasonal position so that I could do that. So you might end up talking to someone at the right time and get some experience, even if you're underqualified on paper.
Great, thank you.
Looks like we've got another question from Natalia. Natalia, I'm gonna unmute you. All right, you should be able to talk and ask your question. Having trouble hearing you. If you have issues with your mic, you can drop your question in the chat, and then maybe we can read it that way. All right, while we're getting the chance for you to ask your question, I do have a question for you, Gabe. You mentioned when you realized that it wasn't your passion anymore, that what you wanted had shifted. What were some of the things that you did in order to get past that change?
Talk to a lot of people. I think that is incredibly helpful. I remember all of these really big turning points in my life where I was unsure or nervous or something changed. Talking to people helped massively, and not just talking to my friends, not just talking to my family, but also my professors, classmates, anybody that I had the chance to, because I found that a lot of times when you're unsure about things or questioning things, if you talk to enough people about it, you're eventually going to realize exactly where you're at with that decision or that idea, because you'll have talked to so many people with different perspectives about it. You eventually hear yourself saying the same thing over and over again, and you realize, okay, well, this is what I should be doing, or this is what I want to try. And so, that's incredibly helpful, and gives you the opportunity to continue to build a network and build relationships with those around you. And it doesn't have, like, there's opportunities for that everywhere. Like I said, professors, any mentors you have, people you've worked with in the past. Now there's some incredible social networks online where you can engage folks and ask questions and things like that. So I'd say, during moments of uncertainty, don't just sit and be with your own thoughts, because that can really be unhealthy and difficult to handle. But talk to folks about your experiences, and if you absolutely don't know, just do something. Like, I think that is really valuable, because oftentimes doing things is the best way to figure out and get perspective on where we want to be in life, right? And so it's best to get experience, even if it's something that you have no idea if you're going to be interested in or only marginally interested in. Getting that experience, taking it seriously and reflecting on it can be really valuable in helping you figure out what direction you want to head.
Great. Thank you. Natalia, do you still have a question you'd like to ask? Having trouble hearing. And we are about almost at the hour. So if you have a question, I see one in the Q&A. It says, similar to the previous question, I've been out of college for a while now. She originally wanted to be a vet. I've worked in the meat industry and now as a vet tech. I've always had a lot of interest in conservation and wanted to shift careers. Is there other advice for someone like me?
Yeah, I would say a lot of similar stuff to what I mentioned earlier, in terms of trying to, if you know what direction you want to shift towards, starting to look for opportunities everywhere and anywhere to get experience. Like, if there's a field or a job that you think you want to strive for, start catering your experiences to that, and reflect on your past experiences in the meat industry as a vet tech, and think about what skills you've built there that you can apply to whatever field you want to move towards. And try and meet and talk to as many folks as possible about opportunities that they have. I think that's the biggest thing when trying to shift a direction, is finding the right opportunity. And it can be, you can look around and take all the kind of normal routes of checking on different job boards and looking on websites, and not see much that you think you're eligible for. But if you dig a little deeper and start to reach out to people specifically and ask them about opportunities, then you might find that there's more out there than you realized, or there's an opportunity that wasn't there and now it's going to be there because you asked that question. So try and get as much experience as you can, whether that's volunteering or just learning about it on your own. Now, in the age of the internet where we live, like, you can learn so much on your own. And if you're able to just get an interview and you've learned a bunch about whatever you're interested in, you might not have that on paper, that experience, but maybe you have that knowledge and you can show and highlight that knowledge when you have that interview. Or maybe you don't even get an interview. Maybe you just reach out to someone and say, hey, I want to talk to you. And maybe that turns into an interview and they're like, hey, this person's awesome, we want to hire them. So being proactive about how you're searching for stuff and how you're going about trying to get experience can be really beneficial.
All right, thank you. I have one last question as we're wrapping up, and that would simply be, if you could give any one piece of advice to your younger, say, high school self, what would you say?
Um, what would I say? It's tough because I feel like I don't like reflecting back. And that's the other thing. I feel like reflecting back on stuff, you can always take lessons and learn stuff from different things. So I'm like hesitant to be like, oh, I should. Well, I guess you're not asking if I would change anything because I don't think I'd change anything. But advice would be to get outside in my comfort zone. Don't be afraid to ask questions about any opportunities or anything that you're interested in. And foster and value relationships that you have, like take them seriously. I think that's, what I would say. Don't be afraid to try new things and really value those relationships that you have with others.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Gabe, for joining us for Conservation Careers. I look forward to seeing everyone next week at our next presentation. We'll be joined by Henry Adams, who actually works in Chicago at the zoo. So it'll be interesting to hear about his career journey as well. If you joined us today, please be on the lookout for the recording in your email. And if you have any additional questions, please feel free to email us. And we hope to see y'all at more Georgia Audubon events. So have a good day, everyone.
Thank you all for coming.
Thanks for coming.